I was around 21 when this happened. It was the mid-70s. I just finished up some odd jobs in San Diego and was trying to make my way up to San Francisco. Didn't have much money, so hitchhiking seemed like the only option. Back then, people did it all the time. It was kind of normal. Risky, yeah, but I don't know. Something about those times made it feel freer, like you trusted strangers a little more. I was standing by the side of the highway, just outside a gas station, holding a cardboard sign that said North. Took about an hour, but finally, this guy in a light blue van pulls up. The van was clean, no windows on the side, just one of those plain cargo vans. The guy inside looked pretty average. Clean shaven, maybe mid-30s, short brown hair, wearing a denim jacket. He smiled, leaned over and said, "Going up the coast?" I nodded, told him I was heading to San Fran. He said he was going that way for a job and I could ride along. I thanked him, threw my backpack in the back and got in. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. He made small talk, asked about where I was from, what I did for work. I told him I'd been bouncing around, cleaning houses, helping at farms, stuff like that. He didn't say much about himself, just said he was in between jobs, doing some delivery work. But I noticed something after a while. He didn't look at me when he talked, not once. Just stared dead ahead, hands on the wheel, his voice real steady. I figured maybe he was just shy or focused on driving. But then I started to notice little things. Like he kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Not at the road behind us. More like he was looking at the back of the van. Like checking if something was still there. I tried not to think too much of it, but the more I sat there, the more I felt this tension, like something wasn't right. At one point, I offered him some gum from my pocket, just to lighten the mood. He didn't answer, just shook his head slightly, eyes still on the road. About 20 minutes later, I asked if he could pull over soon. I needed to use a restroom. He didn't respond right away. Then after a few seconds, he said, "Flat. We're not stopping yet." And that's when I started to really feel uneasy. The sun was starting to go down, and we were on this stretch of road with nothing but trees. No gas stations, no towns. I looked back into the van behind the front seats, no windows, like I said, just empty space. Except, I noticed something in the corner. A tarp, rolled up but kind of lumpy. Next to it was a small toolbox. The lid was slightly open, and I could see the handle of something. Looked like a hammer or a hatchet. My stomach dropped. Something about that whole setup just made me go cold. I didn't want to panic, but I knew I had to get out of that van. So I tried to stay calm. I smiled, acted casual, and said something like, "Hey, I think I left my wallet back at the gas station. Can we turn around real quick?" He didn't even blink, just said, "Too late now." I nodded, pretended like it was no big deal, but my heart was racing. I started watching the road signs, hoping we'd hit a stoplight or a turnoff. Finally, after about 10 more minutes, we came up on a four-way intersection with a stop sign. He slowed down. As soon as he did, I yanked the door handle and jumped out. I hit the ground hard, rolled a bit, and scrambled up to my feet. The guy shouted something. I didn't catch what, but he didn't stop. Just kept driving, never looked back. I ran off the road through some brush and waited until I was sure he was gone. Then I found my way to a nearby gas station. Must have been a mile or two walk. I was shaking the whole time. I didn't know what to do at first. I didn't have his plate number. I barely remembered what he looked like. I went to the small sheriff's office in town and filed a report just in case. They listened but didn't seem too concerned. Hitchhikers got weird rides all the time. Months later, maybe 6, 7 months, I was at a friend's place watching the evening news. They started showing mugshots of two guys who had just been arrested in connection with the deaths of several young women. They were called the toolbox killers. One of the men, Lawrence Bittaker, looked exactly like the guy who picked me up. Same face, same voice, same kind of van. I couldn't move for a while, just stared at the screen. Turns out they had tortured and killed girls inside their van, using tools they kept in a box, just like the one I saw. I never told the police again. I figured there wasn't much I could prove, and honestly, I just didn't want to go back into that mindset. I think I got lucky. Like, really lucky. One wrong word, one wrong move. I might have been another name in a cold case. After that, I never hitchhiked again. Not once. Doesn't matter how broke I was or how far I had to walk. I'd sleep on the side of the road before getting in a stranger's van again. This happened back in 2001. I was working as a long-haul trucker at the time, running mostly across the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. A lot of open road out there. Long nights, quiet highways. It can mess with your head if you're not used to it. Anyway, I was driving east on I-10 through Texas. It was just after midnight. I remember that clearly because I just called my wife during a quick fuel stop around 11:45. Told her I'd be passing El Paso in about an hour or so. She told me to drive safe, like always. It was a clear night, cold but not freezing. I was cruising steady, listening to some late-night radio, just some old rock and chatter. Road was dead quiet, no cars in sight, just me and the dotted white lines going on forever. About 30 minutes out from El Paso, I saw someone on the side of the road. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. You know, your eyes start to play tricks when you're tired. But nope, there was definitely someone walking right along the shoulder. A woman. She was wearing jeans and this long, dark coat, kind of flapping in the wind. She had her thumb out, just standing there like she'd been waiting a while. Now, I normally don't pick people up. Company policy says not to, and it's risky. But something about this felt different. She looked young, maybe early 20s. She didn't look dangerous, just tired. Kinda lost. I slowed down and pulled over a few feet ahead. Reached over, popped the passenger door open. She climbed in without saying a word. Just nodded once like, thanks, and shut the door. I asked where she was headed. She looked at me and said, real soft, just as far east as you're going. Her voice was quiet but clear. She didn't smile, didn't give a name, just looked straight ahead. I figured, all right, maybe she's been through something, maybe she doesn't want to talk. Fair enough. I told her I was headed toward Junction, maybe a bit past, and she said that was fine. So we rode. For a while, it was just silence, except for the hum of the engine. I turned the radio down low. Every now and then, I glanced over. She just sat there, hands folded in her lap, staring out the windshield. Not fidgeting, not looking around, just fixed ahead like she was deep in her own head. Maybe an hour went by. I didn't push her to talk. I figured she'd say something when she felt like it. But then, it got strange. I looked over again, and I swear, she looked pale. Like, not just tired, but gray. Her lips, her skin, even her eyes looked washed out. And I don't know how to explain this, but she seemed colder than before. I mean, physically. The air on her side of the cab felt like it dropped a few degrees. I shook it off, told myself I was just tired, that the heater maybe wasn't blowing evenly. Then, out of nowhere, she whispered something. I barely heard it. I said, sorry, thinking she was finally opening up. She didn't answer. I glanced over again, and she wasn't there. Passenger seat was empty. Door still shut. Nothing had moved. No sound, no warning, no explanation. Just gone. I pulled over fast. Heart was pounding out of my chest. I got out, ran around the truck, opened the passenger door like maybe, just maybe, she'd fallen or something. But no, nothing. Not even a mark on the seat. No indentation like someone had been sitting there for an hour. Nothing. I even looked down the road behind me. No sign of her. Just empty black highway. I stood there for a few minutes, trying to make sense of it. I thought maybe I'd fallen asleep at the wheel and dreamed it. But I hadn't. I was too awake. I remember her. I heard her. She was real, or she felt real. Eventually, I got back in and kept driving. Kept looking at the seat now and then, half expecting her to be back. She never was. A few days later, I told a gas station attendant about it when I was passing through that area again. Just kind of casual, like, "You ever see anything weird out here?" The guy looked at me dead serious and said, "You see the girl?" I didn't say anything. He said, "Hitchhiker? Long coat? Doesn't talk much? Pale face?" I nodded slowly. He said, "Yeah, you're not the first." Apparently, other truckers and late-night drivers had reported picking her up too. Always the same story. She gets in, says almost nothing, then disappears before the next town, always on that same stretch of I-10. Some people think she was hit by a car there years back and never got to where she was going. I don't know what I believe, but I know I wasn't dreaming. I felt her there. I heard her voice, and I'll never forget how cold that seat got right before she vanished. After that night, I never picked up another hitchhiker again. I still drive that route sometimes, but I don't look too hard at the side of the road. If I see someone out there, I just keep going. This happened back in the fall of '99. I was 25 at the time, working for a small furniture company out of Virginia. We delivered stuff all over the state, sometimes into West Virginia and Pennsylvania too. I did a lot of the driving, especially out to the more rural areas, places where GPS didn't work too well yet. You just had to go by paper maps or directions someone scribbled down. That day, I was headed toward a town I'd never been to, somewhere deep in West Virginia. I had a love seat and a couple chairs to drop off at a little farmhouse. I remember the weather was cloudy. Looked like it might rain, but it hadn't yet. I was driving a box truck. Not huge, but enough to feel a little out of place on those tight back roads. Anyway, I was coming off the main highway and must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. The road got narrow real fast. No lines, cracked pavement, trees crowding in from both sides. I figured I'd just keep going until I found a place to turn around or a sign to get me back on track. That's when I saw him. Just standing there, by the edge of the road. A hitchhiker. Looked like he was in his 30s, maybe early 40s. Had a scruffy beard, long dark coat that hung past his knees, and a big old backpack at his feet. He raised his hand, not a full thumb out, just a kind of slow wave. I figured, why not? I was already lost. Maybe he knew the area. I pulled over and leaned out the window. Asked if he was going up the road or into town. He nodded and said, "Yeah, just keep going. I'll tell you where." His voice was flat. Not rude, just real low and quiet. I said, "All right," and unlocked the door. He climbed in, set his backpack between his feet, and shut the door gently. Didn't smell bad or anything. Just damp, like he'd been outside a while. We got back on the road, and for a minute or two, it was quiet. Then I noticed he kept glancing out the window, like scanning the trees. After a bit, I asked if he lived around there. He said, "Used to." Didn't say anything else. I tried to lighten the mood, told him I was trying to get to a farmhouse near some place called Dry Ridge, and that I'd probably taken a wrong turn. He just kind of mumbled, "You'll get there eventually." That's when the air started feeling weird, heavy, like the pressure had dropped. I looked at the sky, still cloudy but not stormy yet. Still, the farther we drove, the darker it seemed to get. The trees were closing in tighter. I couldn't even tell if we were going uphill or down anymore. The road twisted like a snake. Then, he started mumbling to himself. Real soft, like he didn't know I could hear him. Stuff like, "They're in the trees, always watching, can't stop now." At first I thought maybe he was just tired or not right in the head. I tried to ignore it, but he started rocking slightly. Forward and back, just a little, like a nervous tick. I started to feel that tightness in my chest, like something was off. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I also didn't want to be stuck on some mountain road with a guy who was acting unstable. So I said real calm, "Hey man, I think I missed my turn back there. I'm gonna turn around." He shot me a look. First time he actually turned his head toward me, and his eyes were wide. Not angry, just blank and intense. He said, "No, can't stop now. They know where we are." I said, "Who's they?" He didn't answer, just stared ahead, lips moving like he was whispering something under his breath. At that point, I'd had enough. I slowed down, eased over to a small pull-off where the road widened a bit, and said, "All right, buddy, this is where I let you out." He didn't move, just kept muttering. I reached over, unlocked the door, and said louder, "Out, now!" He looked at me one last time, then slowly picked up his backpack and got out. Closed the door soft, never said another word, just stood there in the trees, watching me as I drove away. I kept checking the rear view. He didn't move, just stood there until he was out of sight. Now, here's where it gets really strange. I found my way back to the main road about 15 minutes later. Pulled into a little gas station to grab a drink and settle my nerves. Told the old guy behind the counter about the hitchhiker, just in passing. Like, "Man, I picked up a real weird one back there." He stopped what he was doing and looked at me real serious. Asked, "Black coat? Big pack? Real quiet?" I said, "Yeah, that was him." The guy nodded slow and said, "You're not the first. Seen folks come in here telling that story for years." I laughed at first, thought he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. He said, "That road you were on, that's not a road anymore. Was closed down years ago after a landslide took out part of it. Nobody goes up there now." I asked if he was sure because I was just on it. He said, "Doesn't matter, people still find it sometimes, but they always say the same thing. A man in a coat, says weird stuff, disappears, sometimes walks into the trees and never comes back out." I don't know what I picked up that day. I don't know if he was some drifter with mental issues or something else. But I'll tell you this, I drove that route for another 6 years. Never saw that man again. Never went back on that road either.